And even when I was a little kid, like when I was 4 or 5, my mom said that I wanted to learn how to read, and I learned how to read pretty early. I loved reading. I also loved language, and I was growing up on a small, poor farm, grain farm, and we didn't have access to a lot of books, but we did have an old dictionary, probably like from the 1930s or something. And in the back of it, it had an appendix that had, Latin phrases, Latin mottos, and things like that. And so I remember when I was 6, like memorizing these Latin mottos because I just couldn't get enough about language. I just something in me, I was just built into me about language. So that's what I pursued as I got older. Eventually did a PhD in 16th century literature at the University of Toronto. And then from there, taught in France for a while, and then eventually got a job at the University of Winnipeg in Manitoba. Winnipeg is pretty much the geographic center of North America. So it's about as far as you can be from any ocean.
Okay.
um, and I lived there for 12 years, and that's where I started writing books. And my first 4 books were all nonfiction, and they all pertain to either language or history or culture. Like one of them, the first one was it's called Cupboard Love, and a dictionary of culinary curiosities, and it's about where words about food and cooking, where they came from and how they changed over history,
You're
things
talking
like that.
my
And there's about
language.
1,000.
I love
Yeah, yeah,
that.
I couldn't get away from language.
Words and
Yeah,
food.
and then another one, I sort of did a sister book to that one a few years later, which was called The Lover's Tongue, a merry romp through the language of love and sex. And it looked at the origins and histories of words about love and sex. Then I did another one with a friend, a co-author, which was about 16th century food culture. In other words, what people ate during Shakespeare's time and how they prepared it, things like that. And it's quite same in many ways, quite similar in many ways, but very different in other ways. Like they ate sparrows, they ate all kinds of little tiny birds that we never would. And they had ways of catching them. You'd say, how could you catch a little bird like that? And what they would do is they would take um, like pitch, or sap from like a pine tree, and they would spread it all over branches, really, really sticky stuff. Little birds would come and settle on the branches, and they couldn't get away. And so, the next day, people would come along and pluck the little sparrows off the branches like apples. So that's how they caught them. What was the other book? Oh, yeah, the other book that I wrote was about how people at the ends of previous centuries, celebrated or wrote about the end of their centuries. And of course, that one came out in 1999, when everybody was talking about Y2K and things like that. Whoops. And yeah, that was interesting to research too, because I guess anytime I look at history, what I always find is, in so many ways, those people from centuries ago or however long ago, they are so like us in so many ways and so different from us in other ways that it's just kind of fascinating. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I did. Oh, and then and this will come into when I start talking about the molten truth aspect of what we're going to be talking about. Then I stopped writing nonfiction. Well, I stopped writing entirely for about 17 years because my wife and I adopted 4 older children. And as everybody knows, I think, when children are adopted at older ages, that's because they've suffered all kinds of awful things. And
A lot of
so they
trauma.
usually have PTSD and other things. And so they needed our 100% attention, our full support for 17 years until they got to be the great young people that they are and independent. And so then I started thinking, well, maybe I should write another book, but I didn't want to write nonfiction anymore. And that was partly because, having raised these kids and read so many books, I don't know how many times we read the Harry Potter, books, things like that. Because we 4 kids reading Harry Potter to each one of them, times all those books. So I wanted to write something that drew on my imagination. But the other thing was, as I was older. I was a lot older by then, and my memory just wasn't what it used to be, and so I couldn't retain all those facts that I needed to in order to write a nonfiction book. It just would have been too challenging. So I switched to writing fiction, and I wrote a novel, a dystopian young adult novel called The Headmasters. And actually, just a couple months ago, it won a national award in Canada, um, called the Arlene Barlin Award for Science Fiction and Fantasy. So that was very affirming. I really, really was glad to get that affirmation. And now I've finished another manuscript, and I'm trying to figure out what to do with it. And that's where we are.